And then my son passed away in 2008.
Oh,
And that was another opportunity. And I really always like my clients to know that the way to developmental growth is often through pain and suffering. If you can make meaning out of it and learn from it. If you get stuck there, if you get stuck in that trauma, then often there's a cycle of more pain and suffering. But because of my work, because of my training, I was able to move through the loss of my son in a way that actually...
Hello. Welcome to another Knowledge Bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Dr. Sharon Spano.
And if this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps get the word out to great leaders and entrepreneurs like yourself.
Please help me welcome Dr. Sharon with Unlock the Secrets of Time, Money, and Purpose.
This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
I'm Dr. Sharon Spano, and I have a PhD in human and organizational systems. I originally hail from Los Angeles, California, but I live now and have lived here quite a while in the Orlando, Central Florida region. I'm here 6 months out of the year. And then, as I mentioned to you, I'm blessed to be able to head to the mountains of North Carolina from May through October. That's the beauty of being a digital nomad, right? Is we can move around and do our work from anywhere now. So most of my work now, it's evolved through the years. I started out doing consultant work around North America with Fortune 500 companies and just really all sorts of companies, and doing the typical things: strategic planning, leadership development, all the good stuff. I loved doing that for many, many years, and still do some of that. But most of the work that I do now, I focus on working with individuals, high impact leaders who basically find themselves maybe a little bit stuck. They're not sure what's holding them back. So I have some very specific processes that I utilize to help them really discover what it is that's holding them back so that they can be better leaders for themselves, for their businesses and their families. And it's very, very rewarding work because I get to see a lot of really deep transformation, and it's just amazing. So I feel very blessed to do this work with these individuals.
So from your experience dealing with things on a company level, consultant level, it's a little different than dealing with the individual themselves. What are some of those things you talked about, things that hold individuals back? Is it something like for each its own, or there's some common issues or common things that you tend to see with leaders?
Yeah, there are common things, and then I was actually seeing them when I was in corporate a lot, and I wound up I didn't get a PhD to be a coach, but it sort of evolved into that because when I was doing the consultant work, usually the CEO or people in the C-suite, even down into the management levels, needed some level of personal and professional development. Even if I was doing the leadership development work, there was always something going on in their lives. Of late, because of what we're seeing in our world today and the complexity of our world today, there's what I've begun to phrase as the emptiness of success. So they're high level leaders. They're making the money. They've got the cars, the kids, the dogs, the cats, the boats, whatever, but something is missing and they often don't know what that is. And so, we're diving in, and often there is a level of trauma in the background. It is not necessarily complex trauma like we might think about the stuff we see on TV, although it can be. But I am learning, Cedric, that high achievers, even myself, we often become high achievers because we've been through something, and we've got a need to push through it. It's sort of just innately who we are. And trauma is, capital T, lowercase t. It could be anything from my parents got a divorce when I was 4, to an incestuous relationship with a parent. I hear about everything you can imagine, but we work through those things. All of my work is grounded in human development and the stages of human development, but it's also trauma informed. I've had a significant amount of training in that area, and had to get the training because of what was coming before me. So
Mm.
we're looking at the system, the information in the human dynamic system, as well as the organizational system.
Yeah.
And then I have customized processes that I take them through based on whatever's going on with them.
You mentioned trauma. What does this look like? Because we're talking to leaders today. What does that look like with leaders? How can that trauma, how could those things, even going back as far as your childhood, can show up in leadership?
Well, one of the tools that I use is something called a genogram, where we literally go back into the family history, because
Mm.
we know now from the field of epigenetics and just a lot of the science out there that trauma does go through generations, you know.
Yes.
So I might see something, for instance, I have a man that I'm working with now who's biracial,
Mm.
whose father wasn't in the picture. And so our sense of belonging comes from that first family system. We only have
Wow.
one mother, we only have one father.
Yeah.
So if for any reason we have a disconnect from one or more of one or both of those parents, it is traumatizing to us as children. And, you know, we push through, like I said, if we're high achievers, and, you know, we might become very successful, but that pain, that suffering is still there. I've worked with several other high level CEOs who immigrated, for instance, from other countries, and maybe
Mm.
were separated from one or more parents,
Yeah.
or maybe were immigrated too early in their life, and then, you know, entered a school system where they were bullied and maybe didn't know the language. And
Yeah.
now I have anger issues at 50 years old, or eating disorder, and I don't even recognize the why
Mm.
behind that.
Yes.
So I see just, I mean, let me just say, Cedric, nothing shocks me anymore.
Um,
I've seen it all, but I think in the early years, the surprise to me was the fact and reality that people are carrying a lot, and just because they look successful and live in a big house, it doesn't mean that they're fulfilled or happy. And
mm.
I want to be an interruption to that for the generations to come,
Yeah.
because we don't want to keep carrying forth that pain and suffering. I believe leadership is really the cornerstone of our society, along with the family. And so if I can help a leader be a better leader, I'm not only helping him be better in business, I'm
Yes.
hopefully helping that person be a better mother and father for their
Mm.
children. And
Yes.
that's why I'm so passionate about this level of work.
Wow, wow, wow. What success meant to you then, and what do success mean to you now? Because I'm pretty sure it's a different definition for you now.
It's very different because of my experience with clients, but even
Yeah.
in my own life, you know, as
Mm.
we go through again the stages in our life, and in the first part of your life, you know, we're out there working and trying to put food on the table, and again get all the toys, right?
Yeah.
Um, but for my husband and I, as we were moving through those early years and kind of climbing that ladder of success, in the middle of that, we had a son with a very rare metabolic disorder,
Mm.
and it was life-threatening. And that changed the game.
Mm.
Everything became about him, and keeping him alive and keeping him, you know, healthy and all of those things.
Yeah.
So success and fulfillment for me shifted, and then it became really a spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And then my son passed away in 2008.
I'm
And that was
sorry.
another opportunity. And I really always like my clients to know that the way to developmental growth is often through pain and suffering,
Mm.
if you can make meaning out of it and learn from it.
Yeah.
If you get stuck there, if you get stuck in that trauma, then often there's a cycle of more pain and suffering.
Yeah.
But because of my work, because of my training, I was able to move through the loss of my son in a way that actually moved me through the stages of development, um, in a way that was extremely healing. And that is also part of why I'm so passionate and empathetic for what others may be going through, is because of my own loss and my own journey.
Thank you for sharing that. And, sorry for what happened with the things you had to go through. And that's what I want to deal with now, going through. How did you get through that? Because there's individuals been stuck in certain situations for 30, 40 years and don't even know they stuck, but they're stuck.
Right.
So how did you get through that? What are some things, some processes, some things we can think about or consider to get through it, to stay mobile?
Right. Well, one of the things was learning about human development, that it is a process and that we don't have to stay stuck.
Mm.
That there are 12 stages of human development, as we know based on research today. The average American is around stage 4, 5, possibly 6.
Yeah.
So even having that information and knowing like, oh, there's another place to go in terms of my own consciousness
Yeah.
was useful to me. But I think for the average person out there that, didn't go through the studies that I was able to go through, just to understand that there's an important element of having awareness of your own awareness. If you
Mm.
don't have that, there's no shame in having someone walk alongside you, a coach, maybe you need a therapist. For me, one of the tools was constellation work, which I now do because it took me through the healing process after my son's death. And then
Mm.
I'm also a woman of faith and have been my whole life.
Yeah.
So I had a relationship with God and I leaned into that very deeply.
Yeah.
When we look at the stages of development, there are also 6 lines of human development that we want to be nurturing. We tend to, as Americans, focus on cognitive, but
Mm.
there's spiritual, there's moral, there's interpersonal, there's somatic,
Mm.
so we want to develop those other lines. And practically speaking, if we look at, where am I short? Maybe I don't have a lot of friends, so I might want to work on that. Or maybe I don't have a spiritual tradition that I lean into. So
Yeah.
maybe I want to, figure out what I need in nature.
Mm.
What would spirituality look like for me? So it's
Mm.
all about integrating the past with the present so
Mm.
that I can live the most robust life in the future.
You talked about most people are stage 4 in development. Can you walk us through maybe stage 1 through 6, just to have like that dial or that indicator for us to know where we are and where we need to try to get to?
Okay, so we all know like those early stages of development, a baby on
Mhm.
up into, adolescence. Those are the first 4 stages,
Okay.
even though we don't necessarily say they correlate to age. And the reason we don't is because, again, if I have trauma, I may get stuck at an adolescent stage.
Jeez.
Unfortunately, our prisons are full of young men and women who are stuck due to trauma.
My goodness.
So they're thinking,
Mm.
drug addiction is another one. If I start drugs at 13, I'm going to act and behave like a 13-year-old unless I get supports for probably most of my life and make decisions based on that.
Mm.
So the first 4 stages are really birth to adolescence. And
Mhm.
what we say is everything transcends and includes,
Mm.
meaning I bring it with me if I don't do the work.
Yeah.
So a concrete
Wow. Whew.
example of that. Yeah, I mean that's the shadow side of us,
Yeah.
right? So a concrete way to think of that is a baby doesn't forget to crawl when he learns to walk. He
Mm.
just crawls less often.
Mm.
So as I begin to mature, hopefully my consciousness expands and I have broader perspectives. I'm now more critical thinker. I
Yeah.
like to use the analogy, Cedric, of a mountain,
Mm.
even though it's not a hierarchical process in the true sense. Just imagine that as I move through the stages and now I get up into 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm moving up that mountain and now I can see more. I can
Jeez.
experience more. What
Yes.
happened for me in the process of losing my son is I didn't plan this to happen, but I was
Yeah.
doing the work on myself.
Mm.
I went from stage 4 to stage 10
Mm.
in a period of like, 7 or 8 years.
Oh.
But I was focusing on developing those lines and broadening my consciousness. And because of, again, the business I'm in, I'm around people that could help me do that.
Yeah.
But if you don't have anyone, again, and you feel stuck, then I would say there's no shame because we all need assistance. And let me just add this very quickly. If anyone is out there stuck, because I run into a lot of people in the middle years who feel like, oh, my life is over, I'm 45, and maybe I've had a failure or two. That is just an indication that you're leaning into another stage.
Mm. Wow.
And that's very exciting.
Yeah.
So it's opportunity, it's not failure.
Yes, yes, knowledge bomb. This is really, really good. This is great. And here's the thing. I want you to kind of break this down for us because you've been doing this for years, and this is, like looking at the back of your hand or whatever. But for most of us, all this, even what you just said, going from process, from the development from 1 to 4, most people don't even know that. And you talked about you went from 5 to 10. I want you to kind of explain to us what that looks like. For most of us, we don't have that roadmap, but we don't have that road to drive on. I mean, we're all on the we're bumping into the poles, and we're all on the side of the road and not even on the road. So just bring us back to the road on what that looked like, so we can have a great map
Yeah.
to get from 1 to 4, but from that 5 to 10, what does that look like? So
Well,
we
it's
can.
it's yeah, it's such a great question, and
Mm,
it's complex, and so I'll bring it to something very concrete.
okay.
And that is why I wrote the book on time and money,
Mm,
because complexity of time and money is they're abstract and concrete all at once, right?
uh, mm,
So, so for an example, someone at the expert stage, okay, would have issues with time because they're focusing more on, and this is just an example, more on efficiency than effectiveness.
mm,
Like when I
mm,
have clients at the expert stage, and they're often engineers, people that are in more technical kinds of things, they'll have trouble maybe with billing because, they spend more time on the project than they should, and now, they don't bill properly for their time, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Where someone at the achiever stage, which is one stage above, is all about chasing time and money because they're goal oriented, and they love the game. So you often see entrepreneurs at the achiever stage
Mm,
because they love the game of, chasing that money, and time isn't an issue for them because they can move time and they can create results. And when you
mm,
get into the later stages, so there's a progression, of course, you get to the point where money is no longer about buying the toys. Money is about serving the greater good of humanity,
wow. Mm, mm,
that kind of
mm,
thing. And
yeah.
time is peaceful. Time, I'm no longer chasing time.
Yes.
Now enjoying, and I'm in the present moment. So you can start to see the evolution, because there's so many nuances between each stage.
Mm,
And I actually have a whole, chart in my book on some of these nuances. But I explored the experience of time and money through the stages for
yeah.
that reason, because what I saw was people either had a lot of time and no money, or a lot of money and no time. And I
Mm,
was very curious about the correlation between the two
yeah.
through the lens of the stages of human development. So if I go backward a moment to the conformist stage, and I mentioned to you a moment ago that that's where we have, some we know that some of our people in prison are there, is because think of a teenager. They're not able to see beyond the immediate gratification of the moment. So you might have a son that's saving for a car, and then his buddy says, "Hey, let's go out and we're going to go away for the weekend." And the next thing you know, he forgets about the car and he blows all the money on one weekend on games or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that impulsive nature in the earlier stages around time and money that we see that often translates into people getting into trouble and making poor decisions.
Mm.
So I kind of jumped around there about a bit. It's a lot, I know, to take in.
This
I think
is.
the only thing I would want your audience to really know is that there are 12 stages, and
Mm.
wherever you are, you don't have to be stuck. There's an opportunity for growth and higher levels of consciousness.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you so much, Knowledge Bomb. I definitely want to go here. I want to talk about your book, amazing book, The Pursuit of Time and Money. But I want you to kind of give us some nuggets. Give us some nuggets. I want you to talk to individuals right now, that leader, and explain to them why they may consider reading your book.
Well, the book, I mean, when you write a book, you always think after the book is done, you do a million things differently. But what I was trying to do there was to really help people understand that, we talk about time and money a lot, But I don't know that we really focus, as I said earlier, on the correlation between the two. And
Mm.
when you think about it, each and every day we're making literally dozens and dozens of decisions based on, do I have enough time? Do I have enough money?
Mm.
And if I live in a scarcity mindset, I'm probably making the wrong decisions, or at least not the best decisions around those two resources. So my goal in writing the book was to help people understand the complexity of the two and the correlation between the two. But then, as I said earlier, the fact that we're going to have different perspectives based on our stage.
Mm.
So I go into the stages, not in great length, but we did some research and we started to see what the scarcity looked like. And there was a spectrum, as you would imagine, from scarcity to abundance. What
Mm.
was interesting was that the moderate scarcity and the moderate abundance looked the same, meaning people were doing the same things,
Yeah.
but one is based on fear,
Uh,
where the other is based on a more positive perspective. So for instance, the guy that is saving for retirement, that's a worthy thing, right?
mm.
But if he's saving for retirement and I literally had a gentleman say he'd never taken his kids to Disneyland and he lived
Uh,
in Los Angeles because he was saving for retirement. Well, now that's a fear-based decision, right?
mm.
Which is different from the guy who's saving for retirement in a reasonable way and he's still enjoying his life, taking his family on vacations and that kind of thing. That was one of the big things that showed up, was how the moderate was actually more intriguing than the scarcity's kind of obvious, abundance is kind of obvious. So what I did in the book was I broke down that spectrum from the stages, but then we also showed how people looked at generosity,
Mm.
and different other elements of time and money, how they made decisions. And then we have reflective practices in the book that can help them really look at their narratives and reflect so that they can begin to make change and different choices. Like, let me just speak for a moment to the individual,
Uh,
because these narratives again come from our early childhood experiences.
mm.
I come from a very poor family, but we never knew we were poor.
Mm.
My mother, on the other hand, I was reared by my paternal grandmother. My mother, on the other hand, her favorite word was cheap, and
Mm.
and everything was us versus rich people in her mind. So I on one hand had an abundant perspective from my father, but a scarcity perspective from my mother, and they both
Mm.
show up at different times,
Uh,
depending
uh,
on the situation. So for the individual, I say examine the narratives in the family.
wow.
What is the conversation around money and time? And those were some of the questions that we asked. We asked, what did you learn from your mom or your dad around money? Um, but then when you're talking about pressured environments in corporate, we're seeing this now in the country as everything is being slashed,
Mm.
and not in a strategic way. And so I think the same is in corporate. Like, we look at, what are we talking about in terms of time and money? What systems and processes do we have in place?
Mm.
And if we're talking about cuts, why are we talking about cuts? Because are they going to cost us more in the long run because we're in scarcity,
Uh,
versus could we initiate something from an abundant perspective that
mm.
maybe inspires our people to create more clients or more business, or something along that line? Um, so, I mean, I think you have to really look at where's the greatest pain
Mm.
and what is the narrative around how to solve it. Because particularly if there's a team effort, my husband's going through this right now on a board that he's involved in. And, the one guy that just wanted to slash and burn, but in the slash and burn, he was going to destroy the quality of the organization.
Mm.
And fortunately, the other people on the board are saying, no, we're not willing to do that. We just need to make other decisions that will help us create more quality and
Right.
and generate more money and be creative in the process. That's the big difference too, I would say,
Um,
between scarcity and abundance. People who come from abundance are creative,
mm.
figure out how to generate more.
Yes.
If
Yes.
I always say a fear-based decision is not a decision because it's based on emotion, not facts.
Mm. Knowledge bomb. And this is good. This is good. This is good. Let's talk a little bit about purpose, strength, weaknesses, or whatever. How do we
Right,
figure
right,
this thing out?
right. I think it's an important question. With my clients, I have several assessments that we use in the beginning
Mm.
to just first get clear on their talents, not
Ah,
personality assessment, not IQ, just what are your talents and your preferences, because they most often don't know that. Many of us are steered into a career or we take on an opportunity because someone told us we should or our parents wanted that for us, that kind of thing. And then we get halfway down the road and decide, gee, I never wanted to be an engineer or a banker or whatever.
yeah.
But I often rely on, I don't always have to do this. The work is so deep that a lot of times it bubbles up naturally. But once we move through the obstacles and uncover what's holding them back,
Mm.
and my work is grounded in something called integral theory. That's another framework that I use. So we actually come up with an archetype for their current way of being,
Mm.
and then we look at an archetype for the new way of being of where they want to go.
Ah,
So often in that process, the mission or the purpose will reveal itself. If it doesn't, I love and still believe in the old Stephen Covey work of developing a mission statement. I have one
mm.
of my own that I've had forever and ever, and it's my driver, it's my foundation, it's my compass for decisions that I make on opportunities. And as Stephen Covey used to say a million years ago, it's easier to say no if you have a bigger yes. The
Yes.
mission statement is the bigger yes. And if
Yes.
I have a client that needs something that concrete, then we have a process that we go through for them to literally have a written mission statement, no more than 2 sentences.
Yeah.
Mine's been the same for my entire career. How I've lived it out has changed, but the mission has never changed. And it was all about human potential, which is why my podcast is named The Other Side of Potential.
Yeah, that is that is awesome. I don't know. When somebody says something you can relate to it. I mean, you just want to jump up and run across, but then I don't want to like what happened to Cedric. But I'm really fired up because I think it was probably for me maybe 10 years ago. It was when Simon Sinek came up with Start with Why. So I
Mhm.
read the book like, okay, what's my why? What is my purpose? What is my and
Yeah,
really before I say that, I want to say you said something and Lead to Greatness, write this down if you haven't done this. She said talents and preference. And that's so important, when we're trying to discover the purpose, if we haven't got there yet, if we haven't got that from fulfillment. So the a talent and purpose. And one of the things for me, my statement is helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Really, it changed my life. When I first had
right,
that statement, the joy and fulfillment wasn't there when the statement was created, but it's like every year it's like I get closer and closer and I'm more fulfilled and more fulfilled. And
right,
it's really mind blown. I didn't know what joy was until you really experienced it. I mean,
right,
I've been through points in my life where I say, oh man, I got joy, I'm happy and all that. And it's like, and what I'm saying is I'm probably still not even close. Maybe 10 years from now, I'll be like, hey, I remember back then I thought, but it's so amazing. I don't want to stay here. I want to keep growing,
right,
but that purpose thing, that purpose statement. So I know what you're saying. I mean, it works. It works. My purpose statement, my mission statement hasn't changed.
right.
And matter of fact, it's part of my podcast. It's the same thing, helping us reach our greatest potential, change the world. But it's in every area of my life. I want you to share your mission statement and how you live that out every day.
Right. So mine is living from integrity and principle. I will do my utmost to serve, inspire, and lead others to their highest potential. And the integrity and principle, I did a lot of work around those two words, and
Yeah,
they reflect my family values, my relationship with God, my patriotism for the country,
yeah,
all the character stuff.
yeah,
But it's in those two words, and I realize that throughout my life, I've always been about helping others, reach their potential. I mean, that is my work, and it's changed. It was in the early years, I was an advocate for people with disabilities because of my son and helping them find, their potential.
Yeah.
And then it was in the consultant world. And then I was a professional speaker for many years and in and out of companies. And then as a writer and now as a podcast host and coach, it changes based on, my consciousness and what is fulfilling for me. But the essence of it never changes. And for anyone listening, Cedric, I want to say, back in the day, I remember meeting a lot of people who seemed to have their act together. And when I would say, well, how are you managing all this? You've got kids and work. And they'd say, well, I have a personal mission statement. And I used to think, oh, good Lord, really? And then finally, I committed to the process myself, and I understood, because it truly does become your compass. And when we forget, as we often do, that we are called to something greater and we are gifted with talents to serve in a way beyond our own egocentric needs, it's good to have something to go back to remind us of how God created us and what He created us for.
Amen. Amen. Dr. Sharon, I want to just from your personal experience, do you ever feel like early on in your life, you spend all this energy chasing something? Are you in a place in your life, or do you experience this thing where it's like you're no longer chasing, and it's like the things, it's like it gravitate towards you, and it's like it just, I don't know, just how was your experience with it? Is it
Yeah.
like free fall where it's just like it just happened? It's like God just, the doors just open, like going into, here we have HEB, but going into Kroger's, I think Kroger's is everywhere. Going to a Kroger's, the door open by itself. Well, what is your experience in that aspect of it? And like it's effortless. These doors just open.
Yeah.
I'm not chasing it. It's chasing me. If that makes
It's
sense.
so great. It's such a great question, because I think I was not really ever one that chased success or money.
Mm,
I was more chasing significance, but even
ah,
more than that, I did not know the rock I was pushing up the hill, I guess I want to say, was to belong. Uh,
mm,
I just never belonged anywhere, because again, I was this kid thrown into an environment, taken from her parents, put in a home where nobody really wanted us there,
wow,
and my sister and I. And I never really knew that I had this thing about not belonging
mm,
until, my later years. And then I started to see that I was selecting out a lot of places. Like I would decide before I even got there that I didn't belong, you know.
yeah,
Um,
wow,
and once
it's
I
huge.
figured that out, it's just an incredible thing to know that you do belong and know who you are, and there's such a peacefulness,
Yeah,
and then your heart opens to such a level of love for other human beings in a way that I just didn't even know was possible. And it doesn't mean I don't have days, we all have days where,
absolutely,
that's the thing
absolutely,
about the stages, is you can fall right down that ladder and be triggered in any given moment. But the
absolutely.
difference is you have awareness of awareness, and you come out of it very, very quickly.
Yes. What would you say for an individual that maybe every time something happens, some triggers or whatever it is, those things happen, and they can't figure out why they're stuck where they're stuck? What is the one thing or something that you would give them, advice you would give them?
Well, one of the tools that I use is something called it comes from the renowned work of Bill Schwartz. It's called, pardon me, parts of self. We look
Mm,
at the parts of self.
mm,
So, if you don't have access to someone that can help you with that level of work, one of the things to ask yourself is, what is, again, always look at the narrative. So the narrative is, maybe I felt rejected because somebody said whatever.
mm,
And then ask yourself, what is the first time I remember when I go through the parts of self exercises with somebody, I'm amazed. They can always tell me, I was 4 years old. I was in a race and I wanted to win the race. and I fell and all the kids laughed at me. That was the first time I felt rejected, or I felt embarrassed, whatever
Yeah.
the thing is, because
Yeah. Yeah.
some people it's embarrassment, some
Yeah.
people it's rejection, some people it's I don't feel respected. We all have a thing, right? For
Yeah.
me, it's belonging. You ask yourself if you can identify that narrative, and then ask yourself, how old was I the first time I felt that? And you can recall that. Then what you want to remember is that that little person, that part of you, rose up to protect you
Mm.
in that moment. But the reality is you don't need that little person protecting you anymore, because you're a grown up now and you can handle rejection differently.
Yeah.
And I'm giving a very simplified version of this, but there's many ways to look at the parts, because those parts all have a role in protecting us from going into further damage, or from really starting to feel less about ourselves, or worse about ourselves, maybe I should say.
He said something that's really crazy that I needed protection from when I was 5 years old. I don't need protection from that anymore. But even now, I'm still protecting myself from that.
Right.
So just you saying that alone, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
Yeah.
It's a sense of like, let it go, let it go. I mean, sometimes it's easy. Cause we all say, oh, let it go, let it go, let it go. It's easy to use, say, let it go, but you still have to put some logic to it. And what you just said, I don't need it anymore. I don't have to hold on to it. Let it go, Cedric. Let it go. So I thank you. Thank you so much personally.
Well, and you can even, if you need to, talk to that little 5-year-old
Mm,
and say thank you for being there for me at 5. And I,
jeez.
I honor what you did for me, but I'm a grown man now and I no longer need you.
Knowledge. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know the voices, the ears through Lead to Greatness has been impacted by this episode, by this podcast, by your brilliancy and sharing us, to helping us see the other side of potential. And this is so amazing. I want to, before we get off on today, if there's anything that was left on the table that we didn't take off, go ahead and share with us now.
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, you asked such great questions. I think maybe just to reiterate that no matter where people are, you don't have to be alone, and you're not alone. We are all in this human experience together, and we have all had trauma of some shape or form. We have all had moments where we feel insignificant and that we're not enough, and we're comparing ourselves to others. I am very transparent about that with even my own clients, because I never want them to think that, there's this perfect place to get to. It is a process. Growth is a process. And if you need help, find some help to get you where you need to go.
Knowledge. Bomb. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is amazing. Thank you for the information. My spirit is really stirring up right now, and definitely excited. All these notes I have here, applying it to my life, and hopefully Lead to Greatness doing the same thing. Learn and take it. What's your takeaway? What can you apply to your life to become better? To reach your greatest potential and change the world, because when you change, everything around you begin to change. Dr. Sharon, if someone wants to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
2 things, and this is a little bit longer, and we're working on, if anyone wants to know where they are in the stages, the assessments are costly and lengthy, but we've created a simpler version of it so people can at least get the beginning idea of where they fall. And they can find that for free at SharonSpanoWorkshops.com/leaders/edge/quiz. And go and take that quiz. It just take a few minutes, and then we have a report for you that will give you information about that particular stage, which we call your center of gravity, where you are most of the time, and also some information on the perspectives around time and money that you might have. Then if you feel you need something deeper, of course, my website is SharonSpano.com, and you can always reach out to me there. We have a calendar link, and I love questions, or you can just book a discovery call with me, and I'll help you in any way that I can during that 1-hour call. as best I can.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon. And everything, all the information she just provided will be in the show notes. On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
We want to thank you for joining us today on the Lead to Greatness podcast. So remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace.